I think Lucas does a great job of making it seem, at the very least, in the first movie, it makes it seem like it's fairly compact. You can kind of understand how you get from point A to point B. You understand how travel kind of works. They go really fast, and there's this cool kaleidoscope effect, and then they pop out, and there it is. That's what they're looking for. It's what's the what's the
I think a few people would disagree that hyperspeed is going super fast, because that's why we got the Holdo maneuver in episode 8. That's not what happens. And I don't know what actually happens, but I know it's not just going fast.
It's not.
It is going fast, but it's not going fast.
But we're choosing...
I'm pulling actually on you.
Look, man.
Hello there.
Don't have a good day. Have a great day.
Talk to me, Goose.
I'm gonna steal the Declaration of Independence.
Why so serious?
World! I could do this all day.
Are you watching closely?
Welcome, everybody, to the One Head Film Podcast. I'm your host, Seth Mossberg, and we are back with part 2 of Star Wars and our talk about... Whoa, what's that about?
I don't know about part 2. You could call it part 1 if you're really thinking about it correctly.
I decided we were going to go through Star Wars chronologically and not in release order. I'm sorry. If you are, for some reason, listening to this episode first before you listen to the prequels...
Good on you. You did it
Apparently,
right.
You're supposed to listen to this one, go back a month and listen to that one, and then go a month into the future when we talk about the sequels. Yeah, we're going to be talking about the original trilogy today. It's going to be a lot of fun because they're pretty good, in my opinion.
Who am I?
Who are you?
You never introduced me. I kind of interrupted a little bit, so it's half my fault, but I couldn't resist on that one. You set it up too well for me. I couldn't resist.
Isaac and I are talking about the OG Trilogy. Here we go. All right, what do you like? Yeah, the good ones. Well, actually, I think that's a good place to start. If you had to give a criticism, multiple criticisms to the original trilogy, what would it be?
I would say probably at times I would say that the writing kind of seems a little bit blocky. It seems like Lucas is just putting some stuff in there to put it in there, or he's putting it in there because he needs it to be there and he doesn't have a good way of segueing it through. Yeah, that would probably be it. Just the writing aspect of it.
And that's kind of what the prequels suffered from a little bit, and we already talked about that. It's just how George Lucas writes his stories. So it's not wrong, just different.
It's a good way of putting it.
You can't really criticize the technology because they were not only limited, but they actually pushed for, or they improved on a lot of technology, making these movies.
Yeah, 100%. I would say they probably surpassed what was expected of them by a long shot. Even with the first movie, it was just... Yeah, he kind of blew some people away. Similar to Avatar and how that kind of changed the movie industry just in the way of using computer graphics and stuff. It was similar, not exactly with computer graphics, but it was similar with Lucas and the original Star Wars.
Yeah, I love watching the behind the scenes of the original, like how they made the starfights and all that, and the trench run and all that, because they couldn't do green screen. They couldn't just, spoiler alert, I use green screen. This is not my actual room.
No way.
They didn't have computers, more or less. They couldn't key out a certain color so that they could put something behind the person that was now in front of a transparent background. The technology of matte paintings and cutouts and camera tracking, it was used before it. It's not like they created this technology like Cameron did with Avatar. Star Wars used known technology, but used it really well. And that's how the technique of moving the camera around the spaceship models instead of moving the spaceship models around the camera. Very well utilized piece of technology, and how it looked really real. And they made something that is ahead of its time without using today's technology. It's not like like I said, it's not like they created technology that we use now. They just utilized what they had well and made something otherworldly. And that's what George Lucas was going for. He's like, what if we made a space drama and it had a final battle that's similar to a dogfight from a war movie? And that's what he based it on. And he used all the techniques to tell the story really well.
Well, we see the original Star Wars: A New Hope as honestly a really good movie nowadays. But back when it first came out, it was a flop. Critics were saying it was a horrible movie, that Lucas was uninventive and not a good director at all. You look at it now and you're like, man, this is an absolute work of genius. It's part of it might just be that the time when it was made, people weren't interested in that type of thing, which makes me wonder down the road. I know we're not talking about it yet, but for the new trilogy, are we going to look back at that and be like, man, that was met with such horrible reviews, but it's such a good movie.
I don't know, man. We said that about the prequels too.
Yep.
Let's hold off on that until we cover the sequels. Are you aware of how much A New Hope ended up making in worldwide gross box office adjusted for inflation?
Oh, adjusted for inflation? No. I would guess.
Okay.
I'm going to throw a ballpark 100 million.
100 million adjusted for inflation.
Adjusted for inflation.
You're saying the total worldwide gross
from then until now, or when it was released.
This is from Screen Rant.
Okay.
This is from Screen Rant. The total worldwide gross of a film as groundbreaking as A New Hope sits at around 775 million. But adjusted for inflation, it sits at an astonishing 3.8 billion.
Yeah, so that's from when it came out until now. And yeah, that's insane. 3 billion?
This places A New Hope at not only the highest grossing Star Wars movie, but the fourth highest grossing movie ever, behind Gone with the Wind, Avatar, and Titanic. That's from Screen Rant. I'll link that.
Of those top 4, I have seen one of those movies. Can you guess which one?
You haven't seen Avatar?
No.
Oh, okay. I haven't seen Titanic or Gone with the Wind. But yeah, 3.8 billion with a B. That's a hit if I've ever
No
seen
kidding.
one. No, it obviously took off because Star Wars is now, it has been the biggest pop culture topic for the last, coming up on 50 years is what we figured out.
Yeah, I think for a large portion of time, from when Revenge of the Sith came out until the first, whatever that first new trilogy movie was, I can't even remember. Force Awakens, that's what it was. From that time period, I think that was probably the hype of the highest point of Star Wars, because nobody knew if there was going to be another movie made, so we were enjoying what we got and we were interested and engaged in it. We got the Clone Wars, we got Rebels, we got these TV shows that we hung on to and treated as though they were movies. And I think that might be part of why the original trilogy could have been loved so much, was because nobody knew for a little bit if Lucas was going to make another movie about it. If he was just going to leave his space cowboy western where it was, or if he was going to expand on it.
Yeah. As much as I know there's no such thing as the multiverse and different universes situation, I would really want to peek into the universe where George did not sell to Disney, because then he would have been able... Well, actually, I guess he wouldn't have made the sequels, because he talked about how he sold because he wanted to spend more time with his family because he was getting old. So it's a mute point.
Yeah, and I think a part of that too is it could be that we never got some of those TV shows, because like Rebels premiered on, I think it was either Disney Channel or Disney XD. Clone Wars, the large portion of Clone Wars was done on, I believe it was Disney Channel for that one. So if Disney wasn't in the picture, we may not have gotten some of the greatest stuff that we have Star Wars wise. But we're not talking about that today. Yeah. We're talking about the original...
I know, we're getting a little distracted.
We're getting Star Wars as a whole. We're not getting what this episode is supposed to be about.
I know. Back on track. So yeah, A New Hope was actually a success after a while. Like it was sort of just an average indie film, and then it started to catch on and became very popular. And what's interesting about A New Hope that I have found very interesting and went down a rabbit hole late one night is we know how George Lucas has loved to change his final product of the movie after its release multiple times with re-releases or remasters or things like that. And I want to talk about that like in a whole separate episode of changing media after it comes out. But a lot of people will remember the original Star Wars, and it is Star Wars. It's not A New Hope. And people like my dad remember that. Like it wasn't called A New Hope. It was just going to be a standalone movie. Yeah. But a lot of people remember the original release as the one with the old version of the Emperor and some dated effects and stuff like that. But mostly I think of it as the old Emperor. Like that's kind of shows that it's the old one. It's not in canon with, what's his name? Ian
McDiarmid, I believe.
The Emperor. Yeah, it's not in canon with Ian McDiarmid as the Emperor. It's just an ugly guy in a hologram. But there is an older version than that is almost lost to time, and it's not on DVD anywhere. It's not like you can still get copies of the original, which is not the original, the one we were talking about with the old Emperor and stuff like that. So if you want some more information, click the link in the description. It's called Project 4K77. It's apparently the very original Star Wars movie that predated the original, because you can read the story on their website. But apparently what happened was that after as Star Wars was released and it started to gain popularity, even as it hit this peak, this ramp, Lucas was like, oh shoot, I need to make some stuff better, because that's how George Lucas do. And so then he changes it, and so only a couple thousand people see it, and then he changes it, and now the rest of these people who see Star Wars have seen a different Star Wars, and that's the original, the fake original. So this Project 4K77 found a film reel from 1977 or 78 that was playing Star Wars at a theater. It was a full film reel, and they adapted it and scanned it in at 4K because film doesn't have resolution. And it has even more of the original, I guess. And I haven't watched it, but I want to, because read the whole story. It's really cool. I believe they've also done it for The Empire Strikes Back, but because it was something that we almost lost because George Lucas just he keeps changing it. So that's weird. That's my fun fact of the day.
Yeah, I've never heard of this.
I'd highly encourage a read.
I've never heard of this before.
I think the only problem is that you have to get it in less than moral ways. I believe they put it on a pirating site. So I have not watched it, to say the least. What do you think New Hope brings to the table of the trilogy and starting off this whole saga outside of the context of the social climate that it was released in, and how you would have watched it in 77? As a part of the story, regardless of release, what do you think it brings?
I mean, it sets up the characters, but I don't feel like that's exactly what you're asking for. It definitely sets up the sense of what the rebellion is actually going up against, because right away you're told it's a ginormous planet-destroying thing that is now coming for who we assume to be the good guys, and because they don't choke out their people, we seem to be reinforced by that. And it's kind of that scrappy underdog Cinderella story that everybody likes.
I'm going to have to disagree with you that they tell you that it's a world-destroying machine, because they show you.
Okay, yes.
You want to show, not tell.
That's...
I understand what you mean,
yeah.
But it's very important to show that the Death Star destroys planets. Like, that's what it does. Yes, they say, Tarkin says the ability to destroy planets, whatever, but then they show it. It's not like it's just all talk and no show. Like, it is legitimately a threat.
Even on that topic of showing and not telling, I don't know if you've heard, I recall in an interview I heard of Mark Hamill, he was shown like the scene of Vader entering the Tantive 4 in the opening scene, like the very first Vader appearance, and Hamill was talking to Lucas, and he's like, well, why don't you add a little bit of dialogue between like two stormtroopers saying, there he is, Lord Vader, the Dark Lord of the Sith. And Lucas was like, I don't need to. It will speak for itself. And it does. You don't need any context. It's just, oh, this is the bad guy. Oh, I see now.
And the music helps, the minor key and the Vader theme. But absolutely, you understand who is good and who is bad, who you're supposed to sympathize with and all that. When it comes to what I think A New Hope did for the story, because you are supposed to watch 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, the correct order, it does a great job world building. For being, if you were to know nothing about Star Wars, it is and was meant to be the foundation for the entire galaxy. You understand ships and laser blasts and lightsabers and the Force. It's explained, it's shown, and you're never lost. And it can lean both ways for how a director or writer builds their world. Christopher Nolan builds it a lot and gives a lot of detail, and then you get lost. That's where you get confused in Tenet. That's where the Batman that he makes is so grounded, it's almost not fun anymore. Whereas on the other hand, you just have a lot of other shows that just don't world build at all, and then you have shallow characters.
Interstellar, that movie threw me for a million different loops. But yeah, I agree. I think Lucas does a great job of making it seem, at the very least in the first movie, it makes it seem like it's fairly compact. You can kind of understand how you get from point A to point B. You understand how travel kind of works. They go really fast, and there's this cool kaleidoscope effect, and then they pop out, and there it is. That's what they're looking for. It's what's the
I think a few people would disagree that hyperspeed is going super fast, because that's why we got the Holdo maneuver in episode 8. That's not what happens. And I don't know what actually happens, but I know it's not just going fast.
It's not.
It is going fast, but it's not going fast.
But we're choosing.
I'm pulling actually on you.
Look, man. Look, we're 17 minutes into recording this, and we have just started to talk about the actual meat of what we're supposed to be talking about. Just let it be. We can discuss this later. But yes, it's not specifically we go fast and we're there. There's more to it. But that's the general premise, at least when you watch the first couple of movies. It's, okay, they push a button, they go speedy quick, and they're there.
And that's world building. It's good understanding and setting rules for the world you're in. It's just a shame when people who take those ideas and continue to run with them don't understand them completely and create garbage. Moving on.
Yes, moving on. Something else that this first movie was known for. Yeah, it's known for its music. Right? The whole Cantina song that I was just singing to myself, the opening fanfare, the Imperial March, forcing all of that. It was set in this first movie. What's his face? I can't remember the audio dude, but whoever that was did a really good job. And that, again, helped pave the way for basically everything else as we know it. Like the little audio cues that we get, like, oh, this is going to be a bad guy, or oh, this is Star Wars. We got that from that first movie.
And sound effects, just determining what Star Wars sounds like, giving R2-D2 a voice, giving lightsabers a sound, blasters a sound. They're simple enough when you watch the behind the scenes and all of the different ways that they made those sound effects, but they set the standard for, again, world building and what the world sounded like. Anyways, I have another small piece of media that I like to show people, and I will, again, link it in the description. So the Darth Vader Obi-Wan fight was very rudimentary. It was the only lightsaber fight in that movie. They didn't really know what they were doing, it looked like. And Obi-Wan Alec Guinness was an old man. Just couldn't do a lot. And then they improved on that in Empire Strikes Back. A YouTuber fixed it in post, remade that fight, and cut it in between A New Hope scenes that are actually there. And it looks really good. It's not Hollywood level. I would say it's pretty YouTuber level, but it brings more life to that scene. And whenever I watch A New Hope, I go and watch that right after because it fits really well. And that's probably what type of action you would have gotten from that if they had decided to, or if it was made today.
Oh yeah. I remember watching this. Yeah, that was really cool to kind of see.
Yeah.
Yeah,
okay.
It was kind of cool to see that and be like, yeah, this is what that could have been. But I do like the way that it was. It kind of set up for us kind of the fact that, well, it introduced lightsaber battles to us. And especially with the technology that they had at the time, it was kind of impressive the amount of movement they were able to get with it, considering it was a spinning rod connected by wire. Yeah.
Okay, so now Empire Strikes Back. Why do you think it is regarded as one of the best Star Wars movies in general?
Because it has epic action. It has some dialogue that isn't too horrible. For the most part, it's not too horrible. An epic plot twist, I have to say. Yeah. It's a really good movie. I don't know the specifics of why. I don't know the specifics of why certain people say it's the greatest Star Wars movie ever. I know for me, it's definitely up there. I love the battle on Hoth. I love it so much. It's so good. I love the battle on Cloud City. So good. The funny little Yoda bits in the training sequence, not so much. I could go without. But it is what it is. It's got to be in there so we understand Luke's training.
And on that note of Luke training, his clothes are kind of an obvious icon as to his path to the dark side. I think that's pretty obvious of how he was in his white desert robes in A New Hope for the most part, and then it's turning gray and brown in Empire, and then in Return of the Jedi he's wearing black with a little flap of white to show that he's almost to the dark side, but then he has a little bit of the light side left in him. But yeah, I would say Empire is so loved because of what you listed. One of the greatest twists in cinema history, and unfortunately it has become too much of a pop culture reference that I knew about it before I watched the movies. And you said when we talked about the prequels that you just kind of shrugged it off. You're like, oh, okay. Yeah. It's still like thematically it's a good twist, but it doesn't always get you because it's so popular. But yeah, the battles were just elevated to another level. When I think of the Hoth battle, I actually think of the Lego Star Wars Hoth battle that you get to play. And I was like, I love that. I love that level.
But that's because I had it on the DS and I hated that level because I could never successfully get the stupid catch cable wrapped around. It was it drove me nuts. But it looks really good in the movie. They made it look very realistic considering it's miniatures.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it's another step of that technology progressing because for the most part, all the ships flying around in A New Hope were either ones with wheels that they painted out the wheels, or that technology of the models standing still and the cameras flying past it or whatever. This one used a little bit more claymation, used a little bit more updated technology to make it literally down to earth. Those ships are now on the planet, zooming around at low altitude, high speeds. And it looks really good. And also something I realize with older movies, Permanence of Death. We're going to do an episode on this. I promise. We'll get to it. I keep promising episodes. Okay. They're going to come out sometime.
Eventually.
Eventually. But the Permanence of Death with even side characters, just all of the soldiers who die in the Battle of Hoth, in the snowspeeders or in the trenches, like one, they're not that important to the bigger story. So yes, they have permission to die and not have that big of an effect on the story, but they're there to set the stakes and understand that this is war, and the action is so good. Like, man, I love the Hoth scene.
The one gripe I have with Hoth, and I know Lucas wants to demonstrate the use of like the ion cannons and stuff, but you have an entire planet and you decide the only possible escape route is via the ginormous ship directly in your path. You couldn't like go around the other side of the planet or no, you have to go straight through. And not only that, your only option if you aren't able to rendezvous with the group is to fly through an asteroid field. I mean,
yeah, you're right. I thought you were going to say, why didn't you drop the walkers closer to the base?
That too.
Back a little bit to when I was talking about Luke's turn to the dark side. Yeah. That is also evident with the training and how he finds or when he has that vision in the cave, which I was freaked out about when I first watched it when I was little.
Yep.
I was like, what is this? But it's also very telling of how Luke's got to be careful in the way he's going. He wants to use the Force and use it fast. And that is very telling for how the Force has now been treated in current projects. Luke's downfall somewhat was wanting to do it quickly and do it without putting in the hours. He's like, I'm not strong enough. Throws a temper tantrum. That's just very telling for how that was Luke's mini arc in Empire versus how characters, just anyone can learn the Force now in the new Star Wars. So that's fun.
Yeah. Speaking of the cave scene, it made me think back to the first time I ever watched Revenge of the Sith. And at the very end, when Luke takes off Vader's helmet, I will admit, I was surprised that it wasn't Luke's face staring back, because that's what I thought the vision in the cave was.
Oh.
I was like, why is it an old wrinkly face? Where's Luke's face at?
You meant Return of the Jedi. You said Revenge of the Sith.
I said Revenge. Yeah, Return. Sorry.
I know what you mean. That makes sense though, because the only other time you've seen Vader, the real Vader, is he had his helmet off from the back from his meditation chamber the one time. But besides that, yeah, you got, yeah, I understand little Isaac's confusion.
Oh. Yeah.
And that Luke's inability to master the Force quickly shows itself in the final battle, where Vader is obviously besting him. And I believe that's not shown how he progresses between Empire and Return of the Jedi, because he's obviously makes that jump of realizing his inadequacy as someone who just wanted results to then becoming proficient, at least for becoming a Jedi without the Jedi Temple and the Council and whatever the Republic had. But
yeah, I would even go further to say Vader was toying with him. The whole throwing objects, ripping stuff from the wall, it was just a display of his power, showing how much stronger he is. And that's why it makes that twist at the end, and him offering Luke the chance to be with him to take over. It just makes that all the more, for Luke, all the more like this is a possibility. He's seen what Vader can do. He's seen how he's the last hope that the galaxy has, and he was essentially just ragdolled around. And he hasn't seen the Emperor yet. He hasn't seen his powers and capabilities, so he doesn't know how much greater the Emperor is. But it makes it more tempting for him.
Another comparison between the modern stuff and Empire is that somebody pointed out a lot of the Force in current productions is telekinesis. Current Force, the one that is being shown in Ahsoka and all that, is using emotion with your hand to show that you are levitating something or holding something up. In Empire, it is very obvious when Darth Vader is throwing items at Luke that he's doesn't need to do a throwing motion. And that's not just because Vader is more powerful. It's showing that the Force is not just an extended reach of your hand. You don't need to do your hand. It's different than that. And I think that's something that's been lost in the last couple of years of Disney Star Wars is how does the Force work? And it's quite obvious that Lucas just wanted it to be less of a extended reach and more of a, however Qui-Gon explained it in Phantom Menace or even Obi-Wan, of moving around us and the Force is in everything. Yeah. A very non-Christian thought process of what the Force is.
Yeah, I would argue the reason why nowadays it's more of like the hand motion and all of that is because they're trying to keep the audience engaged. And so showing that they're using the Force is a way of people being like, oh, what's the Force being used for? Is it a mind trick? Are they moving something? Whereas back then, it was still so much of a foreign entity that it was like, this is a cool battle. Oh my gosh, she's throwing stuff? What? That's crazy. Right? It was used as it's used nowadays for more of just showing the audience what is going on.
Yeah. I would still argue my point because you understand that Darth Vader is the one fighting against Luke and throwing those boxes at him. Even if he's just standing there holding his lights. It doesn't need it can be told through themes and through action without the character doing action. And if I can remember which video it is, I'll link it in the description. But that is just a difference at the very least. So, yeah.
The description's going to be the length of the script for the first movie at this rate.
If you guys didn't know, I had a lot of videos that I think we reference and you would enjoy down in the description. So take it or leave it. They're there for you.
Probably go check it out. You know, one of these days you might throw something in there that nobody expects.
Ooh. Just rickroll everyone in the comments.
I was thinking more of something nice, like if we ever do merch, like if you see this and click on the link, you know, t-shirt or something, or it's like a hint to merch being done. Not saying it is or not, but you know, one day there might be something.
We should just do One Eyed Film Podcast lore down in the description that no one will ever find out because none of y'all look at the description.
Okay.
All right.
Little rant over. Calm down, Seth. We're moving on. Next up.
I think the last thing No, I think the last thing to say about Empire is one of the reasons I would argue, and I think we already talked about this maybe, one of the reasons it's one of the best is because it ends on a loss. Same way Infinity War ended on a loss. Like, you don't really expect your heroes to lose. But Luke has lost a hand and discovered this terrible truth about his dad. Leia has lost Han. Han is obviously in carbonite, which is pretty obvious that that's not a standard practice for criminals. And everyone you just feel that sense of loss. Even for Lando. Lando feels like he's been cheated, and he was. So everyone's feeling loss at the end of Empire, and yet you still feel hope. They're watching the Millennium Falcon fly away, and they're all like, it's good to be alive. I got my friend, sister. I don't know she's my sister. I got my friends here. Han's more or less dead, but life's good.
We could just leave right now. Who needs Han?
Yeah, good stuff.
Yeah, watching it back, it makes me wonder if Lucas didn't come up with the idea for Luke and Leia being sisters until after Empire. Because you've got to think, I don't think he would have added that last scene in there had he known, when he was writing the script.
There's a lot that just doesn't work that he tried to retcon in Return of the Jedi, but Leia kisses Luke. They're still kind of buddy-buddy at the end when she rescues him. But at the same time, it's obvious that they have this Force connection at the very end when Luke is hanging out under Cloud City, that they have this telepathic, he says Leia, she hears him. And also Yoda says there is another. Or is that, never mind, that's in Return of the Jedi. No, he does say there's another. When Luke's flying away, Yoda says there's another, and I don't know if Lucas had that in mind. He didn't for sure for A New Hope, but I wonder what he knew and didn't know, because he also, like, at this point he's also formulating the prequels. He understands the general story of that and how he wants to tell the story of Anakin becoming Darth Vader. So, like, what does he know in the general story that he's not telling yet, and what is he ignorant of and hasn't developed yet? But with that said, the Return of the Jedi answers a lot of those questions, kind of.
In a way, yes.
It obviously reveals that the Luke and Leia are twins. We get some talk from Obi-Wan, Ghost Obi-Wan, just kind of chilling in the ghost life. But yeah, it brings it all together. Luke's redemption, Anakin's redemption, and I think is a good way to end a story. Like, if Lucas had stopped with 4, 5, 6, it would have felt complete. If he had stopped with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, it would have felt complete. Episode 6 is a great ending episode, and that's why I'm so frustrated that they had to keep going.
Well, yeah, it feels like a good ending because 80 to 90% has been resolved. The Empire's no more, as far as we're aware at the time. Vader has turned good. Emperor's dead. Luke is in charge. Everything feels resolved. There's not like a sense of a thread left hanging, like I feel like we get with most modern movies, because they're trying to grow a series out of it. They'll leave a thread hanging, and you're like, well, great. Now I don't feel good about how this movie ended, because there's this. Whereas with this one, it's everybody's present. Luke, Leia, Han, Lando, the Force Ghosts, they're all there. We're like, great, awesome way to end the movie. Awesome way to end this series. I agree with you. I think if it ended if 6 was the final movie in any series, I think it would be awesome.
Which technically it was.
Yeah.
And then The Force Awakens had to come out, which actually, having The Force Awakens come out with all of these problems of the First Order arising and the New Republic having fallen and Kylo Ren rising up from being a fallen Jedi, like, that not destroys to an ultimate sense, but it's like what actually happened between 6 and 7. And they're kind of filling that in now with the TV shows, and it's really showing the New Republic, led by General Organa, to be kind of lame and not know what they're doing. And I feel like there's a phrase for that, of really kicking your characters to the curb for the sake of pushing the story forward. Like, there really shouldn't have been a progression of the story after 6, and yet they managed to retell A New Hope. We'll get there. I know we're doing a terrible job waiting for the sequels episode.
Yeah, this is awful.
More or less redoing A New Hope without really any explanation of how they got there. Whereas from Revenge of the Sith to A New Hope, you understand that there was a fallen order, a new government, a new structure. and it's not that clear from 6 to 7.
Yeah, I do think that if anybody ever has free time and if they are slightly interested in reading, I do suggest reading some of the books, both the old canon, I believe what Disney calls Legends now, on what happens after episode 6, and the new canon. There are some interesting stories that go on with that and stuff that, tie, because it was considered canon at the time, or is canon, it kind of helps tie some of the loose threads that do exist after the original trilogy. And it is interesting. As much as I wish we could have gotten some of those loose threads tied up, like the evolution of the Force kick that we see Luke wield to such effect on Jabba's sail barge. We don't.
I didn't get it for a second.
Yeah. It's
good reference.
If you don't understand, there's a fight scene near the beginning of the movie where Luke is fighting somebody, and because they didn't have like the VFX and stuff that we have nowadays, they had to use practical effects, and that included with like fight scenes. And I don't know if it was just the way that the camera was positioned or something, but Luke goes to kick a character, but you can very clearly see, even without slowing it down, he's short by like a foot. And this character just throws himself backwards. And so it's kind of led to this Force kick, because it's in the movie, so it has to be canon.
Did they actually develop that in Legends, in books?
I do recall it was a while ago. There was a book I read that, yes, had like a character use a Force kick, and it referenced back to when Master Skywalker used to use the Force kick on his missions. And it was...
That's such a Star Wars thing to do, is to take a little irrelevant fact from the movie and run with it and give it lore and give it a story. But with Return of the Jedi, we get introduced to the Emperor and kind of the ultimate Force abilities, but at the same time, the ultimate dark side Force abilities with the lightning and the intensity that the Emperor fights with. But I really, anytime I watch Return of the Jedi and see Darth Vader throwing the Emperor down the pit, I can't. It has no more meaning anymore. By retconning it and saying that it was that he cloned himself. Like, we always had those theories ever since the Return of the Jedi came out. Everyone had theories of if the Emperor survived, and then we got what we wanted and we hated it. Like,
we can't be satisfied.
It's not that we wanted it so badly and then spat in the face of the ones who gave it to us. It's that I think they did it poorly, and I don't think it should have been the right move. It's a great sacrifice from Darth Vader for the son that he loves, and that's the arc of Anakin, realizing that this is how he saves the ones he loves. When he realizes that Luke is his son, he is able to save his family line just like he wanted to in Revenge of the Sith.
Yeah, and I mean, again, we're reaching into the new series, but yeah, it does at the time when it came out and before the new trilogy came out, it was the ultimate sacrifice. It's what made, I think, the ending of the movie so good, was because the big bad got defeated by his very own underling, and then that underling, who was a big bad, now becomes good because he saw the good in his son. It really just turned that very moving part of the movie into something that's moot now. He might as well not have done it at that point.
And I think the redemption of both Anakin and Luke, Anakin over the course of 1 through 6, Luke over the course of 4 through 6, can have some biblical qualities to it. Maybe you have a different way of approaching this, but the redemption of almost repenting, I would say, making a U-turn and realizing the wrong that's been done. Now, Darth Vader didn't necessarily apologize for all the people he's killed, but his heart softens immensely from being this rage-filled monster to this soft and gentle-eyed father, more or less becoming a new creation when he experiences love. That's the opposite of rage and hate that Anakin suffered from and became Darth Vader. And that's what the dark side thrives on. That's what was built up in these movies when we're learning more about the Force, is that hate leads to the dark side. And it's not necessarily reciprocated in the Jedi way for the sake of love, but it is putting others' needs ahead of your own. And when Luke realizes what he's about to do to Darth Vader, when he's about to end his life, he realizes that this is not the way, and not a reference to the Mandalorian. It's not the way of justice. And he realizes not only that he's about to kill an unarmed man, literally unarmed.
Oh God.
I am proud of that one. I am so proud of that one.
That was awful. Oh my God.
Not only is he about to kill an unarmed man, but he's about to kill his own father, and he can't do it. And even though he knows what that's going to lead to, and that's even when the symbolism of his little flap on his shirt coming open to show the little bit of light side, and that's a little bit inaccurate if you're comparing it to are humans good or are humans evil. We know that humans are sinful and morally corrupt, and there's nothing good we can do apart from God. The choice to love and to spare a life rather than to take one, that is the redemption of Luke.
Yeah, I think of it a little bit differently than the way that you explained it, in that I see it as everybody, regardless of how they grew up, whether it be like Anakin actually having a time in the Jedi Order, seeing what that was like, or like Luke, where it's hastily, you hear about it and suddenly you want to be it. You rush your way through it. Everybody has a moment or moments where they fall. They turn away from what they know to be right and good. And they have that, and they have those moments. But it's the ability that Luke and Anakin both have to recognize that what they're doing is evil, it's bad, it's wrong, and their ability to turn away from that and do what is good, even at the expense of, in Luke's case, being painfully electrocuted, in Vader's case, death. It shows that, yeah, we will go through hard times, but in the end, there will be those who recognize that what they've done is wrong, and they will return to their good way, or to the right way. Maybe that's not the right wording, but
redemption.
There you go. That's a good word for it.
Star Wars became the very modern version of the hero's journey, and I mentioned last time that you study that a lot in film class, but
yes,
it's a good example.
Close enough. I'll count it. Close enough.
What, the film class that I got with my degree in animation?
Yeah! Woo! All right.
Oh my gosh.
I gotta have it.
It's a modern version of the hero's journey, and the hero's journey, is the protagonist, the hero, learning something through their mentor, the villain, maybe the villain's redemption. It's a whole thing, but it's so well loved for reasons that some people don't even realize. It's because of the good versus evil, the redemption, and the storytelling aspect of these key types of characters that some may not even acknowledge, and that's fine. But yeah, I think that's why it's so good. But I have one last question for you. Might get a little controversial.
Oh boy.
Which Anakin should show up at the very end of Return of the Jedi? Which Force ghost should it be? The one who portrays Darth Vader as he died, or Darth Vader as he turned from the good side to the dark side?
Especially with what we've seen now in Ahsoka, and the way that Force ghosts kind of work with that.
No.
Let me finish my thought. Let me finish my thought. Let me finish my explanation. All right,
fine.
I say it should be the Darth Vader Anakin that shows up, because that's the Anakin that Luke knows, and that's what's meaningful to him for him to see. Admittedly, that's added afterwards, but besides the point. Because it's the Obi-Wan that Luke knows, and the Yoda that Luke knows that show up. It should be the Anakin that Luke knows. If Hayden Christensen shows up in that, while Luke might understand, oh, that's Anakin, it's not going to be the person that he recognizes as his father.
Mm-hmm.
That's my explanation for it.
That's a good reason.
And especially now in Ahsoka, that we've seen that Force ghosts can kind of be a little bit malleable, we can say, in their appearance. But yeah, sorry, you were saying
I'm not
something.
going to comment.
You were no. You need to answer this now. You had a strong opinion.
No, I meant about Ahsoka.
Oh,
I meant
gotcha,
I wasn't going to comment about Ahsoka. Yes, so Sebastian Shaw originally played the Anakin Force Ghost in the original release, because Hayden Christensen was not even born, I don't think. So in the re-releases, he
I didn't even think about that.
Am I wrong?
No, I
Can we fact check this?
I will fact check this real fast.
Hayden Christensen was born in 1981. Return of the Jedi was released in 1983. So Hayden Christensen was 2 years old.
He was two. Yep. Oh my gosh. Okay. Sorry.
Anyways,
Nope.
so he obviously couldn't have used Hayden Christensen. So after Revenge of the Sith came out, he re-released those movies and put Hayden Christensen in there. And a lot of people debate whether it should be Sebastian Shaw or Hayden Christensen. They say, and I believe this is the reason George Lucas did it, is if you were watching 1 through 6 in that order, you would get to the end of Return of the Jedi and be like, who's this guy? Which has some merit to it. Seeing Hayden Christensen makes that connection that's Anakin. But I agree with age. Like the age thing is a thing of how this Anakin is 20 years older since we've seen him last. And obviously they're not going to look the same. To your point of how he knew him last. I don't think it makes sense in the story to have Hayden Christensen show up as Anakin because who is this guy? So yeah, I think it should have stayed as Sebastian Shaw, also to give that actor credit because he was more or less erased from that role. I think we get the point that it is his 3 people that he looks up to, Yoda, Obi-Wan, and his father, who's now redeemed and is a Force ghost and not falling forever in the pits of hell. Also, I guess this is my real last point, wrapping it up about why 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3 is the correct order to watch them. Obviously, you would want to watch them 1 through 6 if you want a chronological story, which is fine if you want that. But for a first-time viewer, you watch 1 through 6, you're going to spoil for yourself the reveal that Darth Vader is Luke's father. You're going to be like, oh yeah, I knew that. I knew that from Revenge of the Sith. So watching 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, you get how most people experienced it, and you get that reveal. If you don't know it already, good luck avoiding that. And then you get to film the backstory. Those are my thoughts.
Well, I think with either way that you watch it, 1 through 6 or 4 through 3, I think either way you get a plot twist, be it that Anakin is Darth Vader or that Darth Vader is Luke's father. But I would just say purely based on how few people knew at the time and just how big of a shockwave it made, I would say go 4 through 6 and then 1 through 3. The timeline gets a little bit confusing, but it feels like the most rewarding out of all of them.
Yeah, that's the word, rewarding. Cool. Thank you guys for listening to us ramble. That's all this podcast is sometimes, but I love chaotic. It was. Join us in like a month when we absolutely tear apart the sequels and really rant. You thought we were ranting in this episode? Just you wait for the sequel.
We're getting a whole speech written up for each of them. Don't worry about it. It'll be a rant fest. Gosh.
I'm actually excited. He's already fed up. Thank you guys so much for listening or watching. Follow us on whatever platform you're listening to. Share this with your friends. Follow us on all our socials. Join our Discord. All that good stuff. And make sure to tune in next week for another episode that I can't tell you yet because that's only revealed later. It's a secret and you have to join the Discord to find out. Anyways, we'll see you guys next week. Know that you are loved. God bless.
Bye.